All right, we are on, where are we? We're in chapter 3, I think verse 12. Are we getting ready to move on to Ehud? All right. Oh, and it's a
We were
long
getting ready to
one.
start 12.
Huh?
I
We were
really
getting
don't
ready
have a
to start
break.
12.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't have a
no,
break.
there's not a break till the very, very end when we get to Shimgar, who must not have been important because there's not much written about him. I'll go ahead and read it and then we'll just work through it, I guess. And the people of Israel did again what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He gathered himself the Ammonites, the Amalekites, and went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms. Verse 14. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. Wow, they were in captivity for 18 years. Then the people of Israel cried out. Oh,
Wait a minute. Mine said that the city of Palms is Jericho,
okay.
just so you know.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's good to know. Again, with the different names. Okay. So then the people cried out to the Lord. Again, how important is prayer? And the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite, a left-handed man. Oh, that's interesting that they pointed out that he was left-handed. The people of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, the king of Moab, and Ehud made for himself a sword with 2 edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his clothes. Well, I'm sure that has meaning. And he presented the tribute. Oh, Ehud. Okay, so then he presented the tribute to Eglon, the king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. And when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute. But he himself turned back at the idols near Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. And he commanded, Silence. And all his attendants went out from his presence. And Ehud came to him as he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber. Must have been a strong roof. And Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat, and Ehud reached with his left hand and took out the sword from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and the dung came out. Then Ehud went into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. When he had gone, the servants came, and when they saw the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. And they waited until they were embarrassed. But when he still did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened them. And there lay their Lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the idols and escaped to Seirah, Seirah. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim. Then the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, Follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites and did not allow anyone to pass over. And they killed at that time 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. Oh, there's Kim. I didn't think she was coming in today. Well, that was a very interesting story. So they
I
were,
have a footnote here in my Bible where it said about his left hand. That
yeah.
was considered a handicap. To be left-handed was considered a handicap.
Well, I am then a handicapped person.
Well, we knew that.
Okay, thanks. Oh my goodness. Um,
So am I, Chrissy. Don't feel bad.
you know what I say that we are artistic and creative when you're left-handed. That means that's how your brain is stronger.
I've
And
heard that.
But I'm not good
they
at
say, they say left-handed people are in their right frame of mind.
I would have to agree. I found it interesting. They were in captivity for 18 years. And then they had freedom, but all because they didn't call out to the Lord. Like if they'd have just called out to the Lord, it probably would have been less, I'm guessing.
Do you not have verse 31 in your Bible?
Oh yeah, yeah, it just moved on to a different guy. After him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel.
Oh, goody. What's an ox goad?
I know. Does anybody have? We'll probably find out, I guess.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
John has it in the commentary.
Okay,
Good.
all right. Well, we have lots of interesting things there. Because I was thinking too, like that town, Seir in verse 26. I was wondering if you guys had any other names.
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, Cindy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, John only covers 3 verses in that section. 3:20. I have a message from God for you, Ehud claimed. He came to do God's will in answer to prayer. Calmly and confidently, Ehud acted and later credited the death of the wicked king to God, though it was by the human means of Ehud, just as Jael used a hammer and tent peg, and Israel's armies used the sword. By God's power, Ehud's army could kill a greater number. Men's evil provokes God's judgment. 3:24. He is attending to his needs. The dead king's servants guessed he was indisposed in privacy, literally quotes, covering his feet, a euphemism for bathroom functions.
Okay, could you read that again?
Yes, the dead king's servants guessed he was indisposed in privacy, literally quotes, covering his feet, end quote. It was a euphemism for bathroom functions.
How do you spell euphemism?
EUPHEMISM.
For
I
using
don't understand what that means, a euphemism for bathroom function.
instead of saying he was going to the bathroom, that's what they would say. He was covering his feet. It's kind of like when it says like laying with the, what was it with the mother? It was something about them uncovering his father's nakedness meant that there was sexual relations with the mother.
Gotcha.
Like it's a euphemism.
I
Thank
found it interesting, Chrissy, that your Bible said that the dung came out.
Ew. I just pictured
mean-
this like really big fat
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, because my Bible did not say that, and I thought, well, that's very explicit.
What did yours say?
What verse?
Mine says the bowels were emptied.
Hmm.
Mine just says, even the handle sank in after the blade. Ehud did not pull the sword out in the fat.
You're too far away from your microphone, I think.
Oh,
There you go.
okay. It starts with 22. Even the handle sank in after the blade, which came out his back. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. Then Ehud went out on the porch. He shut the door of the upper room behind him and locked it. So it doesn't say anything about any dung or
Dung
anything
didn't
like that.
Mine says the king's bowels emptied, Cindy.
Mine says the same as Kathy's.
Mine says the same as Kathy's.
Mine says the bowels were discharged.
Okay.
Interesting in the different versions. Yeah, mine didn't say covering his feet either. Mine said, surely he's relieving himself.
Yeah, that's what mine says.
Mine says using the latrine, and it also said that Ehud went down the latrine to escape. from
Ew,
that.
what verse is that in?
Hold on. Do you have it there, Cindy? 23.
Oh, the roof chamber must be
Mhm.
the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine says Ehud locked the doors and behind him and escaped across an upstairs porch.
That's all different.
Yeah,
Let me see.
They're
What's
up or down.
in or out. Yes, my footnote, or they went out through the porch. The meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. Uncertain. Okay.
Interesting. Okay, sorry, Cindy. Got down rabbit holes there.
Okay, 331, Shamgar. His extraordinary exploit causes one to think of Samson, an ox goad. This was a stout stick around 8 to 10 feet long and 6 inches around, with a sharp metal tip to prod or turn oxen.
Can you describe that again? A stout stick,
8 to 10 feet long,
feet long,
6 inches around, with a sharp metal tip to prod or turn oxen. The other end was a flat curved blade for cleaning a plow. And then that's it for John.
All right, Kathy, whenever you're ready.
We started on 12.
Yeah.
Okay, 12 to 14, Eglon the oppressor. The armies of Mesopotamia came a long distance to invade Israel, but the Moabites, Ammonites, and Amalekites were not only neighbors, but also relatives of the Jews. Lot, the nephew of Abraham, was the ancestor of Moab and Ammon. And Esau, the brother of Jacob, was the ancestor of Amalek. Eglon, king of Moab, organized confederacy and set up his headquarters at Jericho, the city of palm trees. Jericho was under a curse, and there's no evidence that the city had been rebuilt, but the location was ideal for directing military operations, and there was an abundance of water there. For 18 years, Eglon and his allies made life miserable for the Jews. It must have been especially galling to them to be under the heels of blood relatives who were also their longtime adversaries. Ehud the deliverer, verses 15 to 30. Othniel, the first judge, had come from the tribe of Judah. The second judge, Ehud, a left-handed man, came from Judah's neighbor, Benjamin. The name Benjamin means son of my right hand. And it says the Benjamites were known for their ambidexterity, and it has references to Judges and First Chronicles.
Oh, they knew how to use both hands. So
Yeah.
if he would have had the sword on the opposite end of what you expected, like, so, like if the guards would have checked him or whatever, they would have checked for the left side, not the right side.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So how do you spell ambidextrous?
A-M-B-I-D.
A-N or A-M? M is in Mary or N?
M as in Mary.
A-M?
B-I-D-E-X-T-E-R-I-T-Y. Makes me wonder, it says the Benjamites were known for their, so it makes me wonder, were a lot of the Benjamites left-handed?
I
And
think
then they're,
I think that it was common that they used both
right.
in that tribe. They probably trained, I'm guessing.
But if they were mostly left-handed, didn't it say the name Benjamin meant son of my right hand?
Yeah, means son of my right hand.
That's weird.
Right there, there's references to Judges 20:16 and First Chronicles 12:2.
Mike said that being left-handed in Ehud's day was considered an exceptional ability, not a disability.
Well,
Okay,
weren't they warriors? Because Saul came from the Benjamites. King Saul.
Many Benjamites were left-handed. See 2016. Does Judges have a 20?
Maybe. Yes, 16.
2016.
Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair and not miss.
So yes, a lot of Benjamites were left-handed.
all right. However, the text of Judges 3:15 can be translated a man handicapped in the right hand, which suggests that he was not ambidextrous at all, but able to use only his left hand. If that indeed is the meaning of the text, then Ehud's plan for killing Eglon was a masterpiece of strategy. It's also a great encouragement to people with physical disabilities who may have the erroneous idea that God can't use them in his service. Ehud had several problems to solve, and he solved them successfully. At the top of the list was how to gain access to King Eglon without making anybody suspicious. He accomplished this by making himself the leader of the commission that brought the king his annual tribute. The paying of tribute not only added to the king's wealth, which he would enjoy, but it also acknowledged the king's authority over Israel. And Eglon would enjoy that as well. Of course, Eglon didn't know that Ehud was God's appointed leader to deliver Israel. Otherwise, he would have had him killed on sight. The second problem was securing a private audience with the king without exciting the distrust of his attendants and guards. Ehud did this first by leaving the king's presence together with his men after they had done homage to Eglon, and then Ehud coming back later alone as though he had an urgent message for the king. A solitary man with a lame right hand couldn't be much threat to a powerful king, and perhaps this despised Jew really did have a word from his God. Eglon may have felt proud that the God of Israel had a message for him, and since he was no doubt afraid not to listen to it, he dismissed his guards and attendants and gave Ehud a personal interview in his private chambers. Since Ehud had to kill Eglon in a way that was quick and quiet, that would catch the king by surprise, he made use of his disability. There's a footnote here. The fact that Ehud assassinated a ruler bothers some people who, for some reason, aren't disturbed that Ehud and his months later slaughtered 10,000 healthy young Moabites. If wars of liberation are justified, then how many of the enemy die is really immaterial, so long as you achieve your goal of freedom. The death rate, however, is still one apiece.
You know, and I think about like that, like, you know, when I think about war today, it's like their purpose for going to war was to glorify God and have the land that God gave them, and it was about God. And today we go to war so people can get rich.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not anything about God.
no, so like I feel like our reasoning for war, like there's like all this sacrifice for war. Like I do think as a sovereign nation you have to protect yourself, but I don't think that we go to war to protect ourselves. Like I think we go to war 99.9% of the time it's for someone's personal gain.
Or political agenda.
Thank you.
Ehud made a very sharp dagger and hid it under his clothing on his right side. Even if the guards frisked him, they would most likely examine the left side of his body, where most men carried their weapons. Seeing that he was a handicapped man, they probably didn't examine him at all. Even a king must stand to receive a message from God. When Eglon stood, Ehud may have gestured with his right hand to distract him and show him there was nothing in his hand. And then Ehud reached for his dagger and plunged it into the fat king's body. It must have been a powerful thrust because the point of the dagger came out of the king's back and Eglon was dead instantly. Got another footnote here. Let me see what it says. Oh, King Eglon's name means little bull calf. Ehud had killed the fatted calf.
Hmm.
The next problem was how to escape from the palace without getting caught, and this he accomplished by locking the door of the private chamber and delaying the discovery of the corpse. As he had hastened away, the attendants concluded that the interview was over, so they went to see if the king wanted anything. The three behold statements in verses 24 to 25, behold is in quotations. The three in quotations behold statements in verses 24 to 25 indicate the three surprises that they experienced. The doors were locked, the king didn't respond to their knocks and calls, and the king was dead. All this took time and gave Ehud opportunity to escape. His final problem was to rally the troops and attack the enemy. The trumpet signal called the men out, and he led them to the fords of the Jordan, assuring them that the Lord had given Moab into their hands. The victory would come by trusting the Lord and not by depending on their own strength. By guarding the fords, the Israelites prevented the Moabites from escaping or from bringing in fresh troops. Since Ephraim was one of the most powerful tribes in Israel, Ehud had excellent soldiers to command. Accordingly, they killed 10,000 of the best Moabite soldiers. Not only was Moab defeated, but also the tables were turned and the Moabites became subject to Israel. We assume that Moab's defeat was the signal for their allies, Ammon and Amalek, to leave the field of battle. If the Jews had been asked to vote on a leader, Ehud probably would have lost on this first ballot. But he was God's choice, and God used him to set the nation free. Moses was slow of speech, and Paul was not imposing in his appearance, but Moses and Paul, like Ehud, were men of faith who led others to victory. Ehud turned a disability into a possibility because he depended on the Lord. And then 331, Shamgar, persistent courage. Only one verse is devoted to Shamgar, and it isn't even stated that he was a judge. Judges 5:6-7 indicates that he was contemporary with Deborah and Barak, son of Anath.
5 verses 6 and 7.
Yeah. May mean that he was from the town of Beth Anath in Naphtali, which was also the tribe Barak came from. Since Anath was the name of the Canaanite goddess of war, perhaps son of Anath was a nickname that meant son of battle, that is, a mighty warrior. What was significant about Shamgar was the weapon that he used.
Wait a
An
minute.
ox.
So son of Anath doesn't literally mean biological son? Because it says,
Yeah, it says it was a nickname. Well, it just said it was a nickname that meant son of battle. Son of Anath may mean that he was from the town of Beth Anath in Naphtali. That might be where you got that.
okay, so the town, there was a town, how do you spell that town?
Beth, B-E-T-H,
House of,
and then A-N-A-T-H, Anath,
oh, okay.
in Naphtali, N-A-P-H-T-A-L-I.
N-A-P-H-T-I-T-E-L-I.
Cali.
Okay.
And it
Alright.
has a reference there to 133. I guess Judges 1 verse 33.
Okay, thank you.
What was significant about Shamgar was the weapon that he used. An ox goad was a strong pole about 8 feet long. At one end was a sharp metal point for prodding the oxen, and at the other end a spade for cleaning the dirt off the plow. It was the closest thing Shamgar could find to a spear because the enemy had confiscated the weapons of the Israelites. Here was a man who obeyed God and defeated the enemy even though his resources were limited. Instead of complaining about not possessing a sword or spear, Shamgar gave what he had to the Lord, and the Lord used it. Joseph Parker said, "What is a feeble instrument in the hands of one man is a mighty instrument in the hands of another, simply because the spirit of that other burns with holy determination to accomplish the work that has to be done." Shamgar may have killed all 600 Philistines at one time in one place, but it's also possible that 600 is a cumulative total. An ox goad would be an unwieldy weapon to use if 600 soldiers had attacked Shamgar at one time. Since we don't know the details, we must not speculate. It's just encouraging to know that God enabled him to overcome the enemy, though his resources were limited. The few words that are recorded about Shamgar give me the impression that he was a man of persistent courage, which of course was born out of his faith in the Lord. To stand his ground against the enemy, having only a farmer's tool instead of a soldier's full military equipment, marks Shamgar out as a brave man with a steadfast courage. Charles Spurgeon once gave a lecture at the pastor's college entitled "To Workers with Slender Apparatus." Shamgar didn't hear that lecture, but I'm sure he could have given it. And I suspect he would have closed his lecture by saying, "Give whatever tools you have to the Lord, stand your ground courageously, and trust God to use what's in your hand to accomplish great things for his glory." To paraphrase E.M. Bounds, the world is looking for better methods, but God is looking for better men and women who understand the basics, the power of the Holy Spirit, wise strategy, and steadfast courage. Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar have shown us the way. Will we follow?
Nice. All right, we might make it through the rest of 3 today. 12 through 14 from Tony Evans. By the time Othniel died in 311, Israel had gotten used to God's goodness and again forgot about him. So after 40 years of God-given peace, they did again what was evil. This time God handed the Israelites to King Eglon of Moab, and he possessed the city of palms, which was Jericho, and they served Eglon for 18 years. So not only were the Israelites being plagued from the Canaanites with their borders, surrounding nations were picking on them too. Verse 15, once again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. Well, why wait 18 years to do so? Sometimes we can stray so far from the Lord that we're not even conscious of how far we've gone or how long we've been gone. We can get so used to being a slave that we don't even look to the divine deliverer. And yet, when they finally called on him, God raised up another judge, a human deliverer. Verse 16, he had made himself a double-edged sword, that is, one that was sharp on both sides. So such a weapon can make a significant work of an enemy. The author of Hebrews describes the living word of God as being effective and sharper than any double-edged sword in Hebrews 4:12. It will pierce the conscience and the heart, exposing motives and sin, laying its hearers bare to the penetrating gaze of an omniscient, now I'm gonna have to think about it. Omniscient. I'm not saying it right. God, you guys know what I mean. 17 to 26. Ehud delivered the tribute to King Eglon, who was extremely, okay, so I was trying to figure out like how he managed to get in the king's presence, because you had to get special permission to get in the king's presence, but he was bringing for his area the tribute. So yeah, that just hit me. So Ehud delivered the tribute or the payment to King Eglon, who was extremely fat man, and he told him, I have a secret message for you. So Ehud had lavished him with a gift, and Eglon was interested to hear whatever message from God Ehud had to share. He was completely caught off guard when Ehud took his sword and plunged it into Eglon's belly. The message from God was thus delivered. The Lord did not appreciate the king oppressing his people, and by the time Eglon's servants discovered their dead ruler, Ehud had escaped. 27 through 30. Ehud led the tribe of Ephraim into battle against the Moabites, and God used him to turn 18 years of slavery into a respite of 80 years of peace. In this story, we see not only that God providentially directed the course of history, but was also involved in the small details. For instance, it was significant that Ehud was left-handed. It kept the sword on his right thigh, safe from detection, because no one would have expected a sword to be hidden there. We tend to look for evidence of God at work in the major events and fail to notice how the little things fit together to make major events possible. So keep your eyes open for how God orders minor details before he provides deliverance. Verse 31. After Ehud, Shamgar, the son of Anath, became judge. He also delivered Israel, striking down 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. Oh, he calls it a cattle prod. There's only one further mention of Shamgar later in Judges, and it says, in the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the main roads were deserted because travelers kept to the side roads. That means that insecurity and volatility were so great in this man's day that people had deserted the streets and kept to the back roads to avoid attack. Philistine thugs made life rough. We can conclude that Shamgar was a farmer because his only weapon was a cattle prod, a pole with a sharp point on the end used to goad livestock into moving. How do you kill 600 Philistines with one cattle prod? Probably gradually and consistently over time rather than all at once. If so, Shamgar was an ordinary man who was dissatisfied with the Philistine oppression and used what he had to do something about it. With God's help, he turned his ordinary cattle prod into something extraordinary. You don't need extraordinary resources or gifts to be used of the Lord to make a difference in culture. You just need to be faithful with what the Lord has given you. Think about the gifts God has provided you. Consider where God has placed you. You may have more than you think when you open yourself to obeying his prompting and embracing opportunities. The end.
I want to clarify something in my head. This Eglon, this fat guy,
Yeah.
he was a Moabite, right? They were the ones that were ruling at the time.
Yes.
And so Ehud goes and tells him he has a message from God. My question would be, why would Eglon care what that message from God was?
My guess would be the Israelite God was well known, and he had control of the Israelites.
So it was more out of curiosity, maybe, than he actually was going to believe whatever that message.
Yeah, even for the king to
Might be.
stand up. Like at first I was like, why would he even? Because like you don't get in. The wife of a king doesn't get into his presence unless he calls for her. So like for this guy to, but the fact that he brought that gift and then said he had a message, you know what I mean? Like for the king to even rise up in his presence was pretty significant. So he must have had some respect for the Israelite God, I would think. I mean, it's just Chrissy's thoughts. I could be wrong.
Yeah, because you would think that why would they really care, if
Mhm.
what the Israelite God said, unless they had some kind of, even though maybe they didn't believe, there was still something nagging in the back of their head that said, hey, there is something to this.
I think it's just like today. There's people all around us that it's not that I think that if you ask people if they believe in God, the majority are going to say, well, yeah, I believe there's a higher being. You know, they may not say God, but they believe there's something. And they haven't been in God's presence yet to know really, you know, that it's God. But they acknowledge there's something. And I think it might kind of be the same way, like they're thinking maybe this Israelite God is that something. And they don't want to discount it because of that possibility. They've just never come to it yet. But I think there is the curiosity, and when somebody gives credit to God, you know, when they're like, oh, when it all boils down to it, they'll say, oh yeah, well, I'm praying for you, or I'm you know, when somebody gives God the glory, they don't dismiss it, they just listen and kind of store it in the back of their head. And I think it's just like people today, most people around us. They just,
Yeah, I can see that now that you say that. Yeah.
Well, my other thought too is like, you know how today God calls you, like, you know, so he gives you a desire in your heart to know him.
yeah.
And then at that point you have a decision to make, you know, but like, if God told Ehud that this was his desire for Eglon, you know, to kill him, then God maybe was calling Eglon, and Eglon was curious. Like the spirit might have moved on him to be curious enough.
Well, and I think there's, again, like talking about most people, but still there's a lot of people out there that just don't have that relationship with God, but somebody in their family does. So they know. They just don't acknowledge it and they don't seek it. So, you know, they don't
They don't want to give themselves up.
exactly. They're not there. They don't want it. They don't want to receive it, or maybe they haven't been called, but they know there's an awareness there.
Well, another interesting thing is, maybe it just wasn't recorded, but if you recall in different circumstances, I'm thinking of one with Moses when he was called, you know, to lead the people out of Egypt. He's like, why me? You know, that type of thing. But you don't see that with Ehud. He just went ahead and did it.
Yeah, on that note, Cindy, because I wanted to share, I don't know, my Bible has each judge, like it's highlighted, and then it tells a little bit about them, like the importance of them and what they did. And I wanted to, this was meaningful to me because it says, at a first glance, Ehud's career as a judge in Israel may not seem relevant to us. He clearly lived in another time. But our commitment to God's word challenges us not to ignore this leader. As we read about his life, some questions come to mind, and it's relating it to us. Questions come to mind. When was the last time God showed me something wrong in my life and I took immediate and painful action to correct the error, such as Ehud, you know, taking the radical and violent action to murder King Eglon? And 2, when was the last time I asked God to show me how he could use something unique about me, such as left-handedness? And 3, when was the last time I made a plan to obey God in some specific area of my life and then followed through on the plan? When was the last time in my life was an example to others of obedience to God? The enemies we face are as real as Ehud's, but they are most often within ourselves. The battles we fight are not against other people, but against the power of sin. We need God's help in doing battle against sin. We also need to remember that he has already won the war. He has defeated sin at the cross of his son, Jesus. His help is in each success, and his forgiveness is sufficient for each failure.
So, Shamgar, my understanding from Tony then was that the city had gotten overrun by like Philistine gangs. And they couldn't even be on the main roads to avoid these gangs. So if he had 80 years of peace after Ehud, if there was 80 years of peace, then I wonder what happened between Ehud and Shamgar, that the Philistine gangs started to take over.
Tim, does it say much about Shamgar or not?
No, there's nothing on.
When if he was a farmer, I could see him being like a farmer and be like, I'm sick of this. Like they come around my property, I'm taking them down. Because it said it was like probably a slow progression. So
It's kind of like where we have now, where people are just tired of it, so we'll take matters into our own hands if
yeah,
King isn't going to do anything about it.
No, it's weird. I just had that little blurb. It highlights Shamgar and then has verse 31
I think
about
when we,
how he once killed the Philistines, 600 Philistines with the ox goad. That's all it says about him.
because mine says that so Shamgar was an ordinary man who was dissatisfied with the Philistine oppression and used what he had to do something about it. So he was just kind of like the local hero. Lori, did you have something?
well, I fell out of the meeting. Because verse 31 is about that's all there is about Shamgar. Verse 4 goes right into Deborah.
Yeah.
There's more
There
in chapter 5, verse 67, it said, which
Okay.
to understand, let me see what that says. Because what?
That's when,
Chapter, I have 6 and 7, not 67, sorry. 6, in the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned and travelers kept to the byways. The villages ceased in Israel. They ceased until I arose. I, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. So then it says something about him being a contemporary to Deborah, meaning they were at the same time. I don't know, very interesting. So Ehud, maybe he was alive during that time or towards the end of his rule, the end of those 80 years. Any other thoughts? Can't believe we're chapter 4 already.
Or slow down.
We have to be praying about what book we're doing next, ladies. I guess God will reveal it to us.
did you stop the recording yet?
Oh, no, not yet. This concludes the reading of God's word for today.